Rise and grind, smoking my Cuban cigar alternative. Let's have this conversation. Welcome, my friends. This conversation is for you, my friends. As you can tell, we are rising and grinding. It is daytime. I just had breakfast, and so the sun is shining on me. And usually, my Cuban cigars have typically been my breakfast cigars. But what happens when you can't get any more Cuban cigars? What happens when you don't want to smoke your Cubans anymore? And so today, my Cuban cigar alternative is going to be one of my most favorite cigars. We got this La Palina Goldie. And so as I get the cigar ready, as we have this conversation, this is its first thing in the morning. And so it's about, well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Woke up, did some work, had some breakfast, and now I'm stepping out to have my breakfast cigar. I wish I was smoking a Cuban cigar. And so you've seen my collection. I really enjoy Cuban cigars. Cuban cigars they tend to be more on the mild side, maybe medium at best. And so I love a good Ramon Allones. I love my Romeo y Julietas. I like the wide Churchills or even the short Churchills. So Cuban cigars for me, they serve a certain purpose. Those tend to be my breakfast cigars. But the prices of Cuban cigars has skyrocketed. They have doubled. And so the Cuban cigars I have, I'm just sitting on them. And so I've bought some additional boxes of some Monte Cristos and some others that I've shown you throughout my journey. But I'm not smoking them because I don't know when I'm gonna ever buy more Cuban cigars. So I'm letting my Cuban collection sit and stack and age. Thing about Cubans, because they're rushed to market, and so you gotta age them. So I never smoke any Cubans unless I've been aging them for about 3 years. And so what do you do when you want to have that breakfast cigar? You want to start your day off with something light, but you add some good flavors on it. You want that honey, you want that earthiness, that saltiness. You want that Cuban twang. What do you do when you can't smoke your own Cuban cigars? When you can't buy Cuban cigars because they're so expensive and there's probably some tariff situation happening? And so what do you do? And so I turn to my La Palina Goldie. And so we'll have a conversation about this great cigar and also about alternatives. What do you do when things ain't working out the way that you hoped? We're gonna have some conversations, my friend, because this is for your education, for your entertainment, for your encouragement. And so let's have this conversation. I'm smoking the La Palina Goldie. This is in the Lancero size. This cigar is put out by Titan de Bronze. In fact, I've been there. It's in Miami. It's on Calle Ocho. And so I've been there. I've shown you footage when I've been in Miami, checking out the whole cigar scene. I like going to Titan de Bronze. I love this cigar. And so one of my favorites, one of my all-time favorites, this particular cigar, the Goldie, it was made to celebrate this particular lady. Her name is Maria. And so she was one of the first women rollers at Cohiba. For a long time, she was the only one who would roll this cigar. As she retired, she passed down the knowledge and the tradition. And so they continue the cigar in her honor. This is a Ecuadorian Habano, anything that you get on a Cuban. And so that saltiness, that honey, that nice, it does have this cedar, almost like a creamy cedar. And so this is just a perfect way to start your day. So I'm having this cigar, and I already had my coffee earlier. It's hot. So I've got this with some cold water. This cigar, it's got so much flavor on this. And so that pleasant saltiness, that Cuban twang. And so if you are searching for a Cuban cigar alternative, yeah, I've done entire videos where I've listed a whole bunch of them. I've talked about Principal, I believe it's Martinique. I've talked about the Hoyo de Nicaragua, Antaño, Connecticut. There's lots of good alternatives out there. But this one right here, This is my real deal Cuban alternative. So in fact, I even actually store these in the humidor where I keep my Cubans, because I'm not going to be reaching for the actual Cubans anymore, but instead I'll be reaching for this. This is my alternative. This is my backup plan. This is what I'm going to do. And so we'll talk about the cigar, but we'll also be talking about having an alternative, having a backup plan. This is my alternative. This is my plan B. Prices of Cubans have gone up. I've got some, but they're not ready to be smoked. And so what do you do when the plan needs a backup plan? What do you do when you need an alternative? My friends, in life, you gotta have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. You gotta have some backups, because life is gonna come at you. You can't just depend on any one thing. And so what we've seen with Cuban cigars, they decided one day to just double their price. Something about the Chinese market, and listen, you can't let the world dictate how you're gonna live. You can't worry about how the economy is doing. You can't even worry about how your employer is doing. You can't leave yourself just out there hoping everything works the way you had it planned. Because one day you're gonna wake up and you might go to work, get that notice that you're being laid off. One day you're gonna wake up and you might get that notice that interest rates has gone up. One day you're gonna get that notice that tariffs has gone up. One day you're gonna get that notice that the thing you love, the thing you used to chase, your cigar, your whiskey, your this, your that. One day you're gonna get that notice that prices has increased. Interest has gone up. The company is shutting down. We're laying off employees. The economy has changed. You can't live life letting the world dictate what's gonna happen in your life. And so one of the things I make sure I do is I always have a backup plan. It's just like how we can have it with our cigars, where we can have our Cuban alternatives. You gotta do the same thing in real life. You gotta have a backup plan. What happens if you get laid off? What happens if interest rates change? What is your backup plan? As many of you know, I worked for the same company for 17 years. And although I had a great time with the company, I had to have a backup plan. I had to have a plan. What happens if the company starts announcing layoffs? Which is what the company did. But I had to have a plan. My friends, you gotta take care of you. You can't be living your life just hoping and with your rose-colored glasses on, just hoping things work out. Because what happens when they don't? What are you gonna do? Tell your kids, my plan didn't work, and so now we're not going to eat? What are you gonna tell your wife? I wasn't expecting the company to shut down. You gotta have a backup plan. You gotta have an alternative. And so for me, I've always had multiple jobs. Yes, I rise and I grind. I've always had 3 to 6 months worth of savings. And I'm not some financial advisor trying to give you advice, but I'm just saying to my friends, to the men and women out there, just like we can plan our smoking alternatives, you gotta have a plan in life. You gotta have that backup plan of what will I do? What happens if I can't work? What happens to my family then? What happens if the world changes? What happens to us then? We all remember the pandemic when everything just changed. And what that signified to me is I can't be dependent on the world anymore. I've got to have a backup plan. I've got to have things stored away. I've got to have money saved. I've got to have a backup plan, because you never know what's going to happen from one day to the next. And so I don't have to worry about who the president is. I don't have to worry about how the stock market is going. I don't have to worry about what crisis has just happened. I've got a plan that takes care of me, takes care of my family. I've got a plan that makes sure that we are good. My friends, you got to make sure you got a backup. You got to make sure you got an alternative. You got to make sure that you are going to be good. This cigar here, this pleasant cigar, that tastes everything like a Cuban cigar. This cigar that comes out of Miami, the city of my birth. This cigar that is so finely rolled. Truth of the matter is, I think it's better than most Cubans. For me, this isn't just a backup. This is a great cigar. But I'm not gonna let the price of Cuban cigars or the situation with Cuban cigars impact even my smoking experience. Even when it comes to something as simple as the cigar that I'm gonna smoke, I've got a backup plan. I've got something that I've thought through. I've got an alternative. Do you have an alternative? Do you have a backup? Do you have a plan in life? And so, as I said, it is morning time. And so I've got to get back to doing my work, all of my jobs. Why do I have multiple jobs? Because I'm never dependent on any one company or any one industry. I got multiple jobs and I got multiple streams of income. I'm not trying to sound like some financial guru, but I'm just saying I rise and I grind really because I'm not dependent on any one thing. And so I've got multiple things that I'm always working out. Jobs, vocations, investments, real estate, all these different things. I got alternatives because I can't put the well-being of my family in the hands of the government, in the hands of the markets, in the hands of the world. I got alternatives. And so for everything in life, for everything that's important to me, I got that mindset. Maybe because I'm a Marine and I'm always trying to be prepared and I'm always strategizing, I'm always thinking. But we shot this really quick this morning to just share this with someone else. To say, yeah, Cuban cigars, I won't be smoking my Cubans anytime soon. I'm just gonna let them sit for years. We'll see what happens with the Cuban market. But in the meantime, I've bought boxes and boxes of La Palina Goldies, particularly the Lancero size. And this is what I'm gonna be smoking. And so anytime I think about having that quick smoke, that breakfast cigar, that midday smoke, where I just want something light to medium body, filled with that saltiness, that cedar, that honey, then I'm reaching for these. My Cuban cigars will just have to age. They'll just have to get better. But for now, I just can't touch them. For now, I'm going to the alternative. So let me know, what is your alternative when it comes to Cuban cigars? Let me know your thoughts on this conversation about having a backup plan, having some alternatives, having a plan B. We thank you for your time. We hope that you are joining this community of people who are prepared. We're not victims. We always got a plan. We always got something figured out. Because we're not just living life hoping things work out. Most of the times things do. But when they don't, we got a plan in place. That's who we are. That's what we promote. And if we have provided you value, hit the like button, hit subscribe, join Patreon, join the YouTube members, join some platforms where we give you additional input. Yeah, we talk about whiskey and cigars, but we have great conversations with our friends, giving you some education, some entertainment, but mostly some encouragement. So have a plan in life, my friends. Like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, rise and grind.